Welcome. So did you have any idea when you went for your first audition, did you audition for Saw, the original one, or did they offer it?
No, it was they offered it
So
to me.
when you walked in, did you have any idea it was going to be a franchise?
No,
No?
not at all. The script struck me as being very theatrical. There were three. There's nothing better for an actor than to be in a two or a three character play, because you don't get buried in a large ensemble. Not that it's not good to be in an ensemble play also, but you look at some of the Sam Shepard plays and the plays. I was raised doing theater in New York, and so when I read the script, it seemed to me that it was very theatrical. There were three characters on the stage. The curtain goes up. There's three characters. One of them's dead. That was me. And he has a tape recorder and a revolver in his hand. But nonetheless, it still struck me as you heard my voice throughout the film, and I was
Disguised.
yeah, I was hooded and caped when
Yeah.
you saw me, so you didn't connect the voice with the guy on the floor. But I hadn't seen the gag at the end of the film before, and I thought that if
Wait, what are you calling the gag?
well, the dead guy's not dead.
Ah, gotcha.
We're a couple of years down the road now, so I feel like I can talk candidly about it. And those of you who haven't seen it probably going to see it anyway. But he's lying there. He's in a pool of blood with half of his head blown off, and a tape recorder in one hand and a revolver in the other, and then the thing begins to play itself out. And so I felt that, and have felt for a long time, that there is strength in silence, and that if there's three characters on a stage, that the guy in the middle who's dead must have as dramatic a reason for being there as the two guys who were, talking throughout. So that didn't concern me, that you never heard much from him until the end, when what was going on was revealed. And I said to the producers and directors that if I were going to do the film, they would have to let me say more than what they had scripted when he got up off the floor, because I thought, I said, well, why sit through an hour and a half of that kind of horror if you don't get more of a window into what was in the man's mind who created it? And so they said, well, like what? And I said, well, how about this? And I gave them that, and James Wan, the director, a young man from Australia who came here with a 10-minute short. First 10 minutes of the film already shot. That's how he sold the film. You could tell from looking at the short that he had a vision. The texture of the film was there. Mm-hmm. So that's what he used to sell the film. He read what I wrote. Fabulous. Just, that's exact. Would you mind if could I have, and I said, no, I'll email it to you later today. So I did. They put it in the script. They were so excited about it. We shot it. It was in the next draft of the script. It was in all subsequent drafts. We shot it. Great, one take. Great, wonderful. We got it, 5 months later, I show up in the ADR studio, and we start at the beginning of the film because my voice is throughout the film, and I saw him laying down all the looping throughout the course of the film. We come to the last scene, and James says to me, well, are you ready? I said, yeah, I'm ready. And he shows me the scene. And the stuff I wrote's not there. Oh. And it's not the first time this has happened. So, and it's not the last time it'll happen either. So the stuff I wrote's not there. I said, well, this stuff's not there. He said, yeah, And I said, well, I said, well, why? I said, didn't it work? And he said, well, no. I said, well, why not? And he said, well, because we just didn't want to wrap it up too neatly like a Hollywood movie, like a lot of Hollywood movies. And I said, all right, well, it's your movie. You know, you do what you want, because maybe he's right and I'm wrong, you know. So I gave them 6 lines. They had 1. I gave them 6. 2 ended up in there. So, you know, so maybe what I said was overwritten, you know, and it's not something you have any control over. So you do your best and you give what you can give, but ultimately the decision is up to the director, producers, distributors, and right on and on and on. You know, it's not up to me. And so I leave that up to the fates.
Well, now I actually watched it today for the first time because I'm scared of those kind of movies. And I knew I was interviewing you, so I watched it. And I was actually quite pleasantly surprised at how it was much more to me in the 7. Why am I so sibilant? It was much more in the 7 genre than it was in the like blood and, you know, like Chainsaw Massacre type movie.
Yeah,
It was very
right.
thoughtful and interesting and much more of a psychological thriller, I thought.
Yeah, I think that's why it was as successful as it was, because it had a different, there was something very theatrical about it. You know, 3 guys locked in a bathroom, you know, with...
Is that what that place was supposed to be, a bathroom?
Yeah.
Could not for the life of me figure out what the hell that room was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was an old bathroom, you know, and...
Just a technical question. How much time did you actually have to spend, you, the actor person, spend lying there? Did they make a cast of you, or was that you every time we saw you?
No, it was me. It was me every time you saw me, it was me.
That must have gotten a little tiring.
Well, you know, you didn't see me all the time. You know,
No,
depending on
they
how
shot
the
around,
shot was
yeah.
framed, you didn't see me all the time. But whenever you did see me, you know, my feeling was that if you're going to lie on a pool of blood on the floor for 3 weeks and then have to get up at the end, it would only be, I'd be doing myself a favor as an actor to do it, because the guy's got to get up. And if I haven't really lain there, you know, it's hard to have a sense of reality in terms of how it feels to get up off that cold floor. So every chance I got to be there, I was there. And
Why was your character in the hospital?
he was, he had been diagnosed with brain cancer. Yeah.
Oh.
And you know, in the process of that, he was exposed to the way that the medical community treats the terminally ill. And that really is one of the, you know, Jigsaw has a number of gripes about the world. And that was one of them. You know, there's another 35, you know, and the list is growing, and I'm sure your list is growing also. I mean, things that, you know, it bothers him that people have all these blessings and take them all for granted. He feels that very deeply, and because he knows there are many who have so little, and you know, and there are those who would say, well, wait a minute, this guy, you know, he puts these people in these horrendous situations, and you're telling me he's concerned about people who don't appreciate what they have? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. I mean, he just takes it. I always, no matter who I play, whether I play an FBI agent or a priest or an astronaut or a guy like John Kramer. Jigsaw is a name that the police and the press have coined for him, but his name is Jonathan Kramer, and he was a child once, and he has. I always try to develop any character that I play, no matter what he does, as fully as I can from a human point of view, because that creates juxtaposition for what the script will inexorably lead me toward. And if you look at people who do bad things or things that are, most of us have a moral restrainer that keeps us from crossing certain lines. Jonathan Kramer is extremely committed. There's one thing that one of the 35 is that people talk a good game but don't put themselves out there and don't do anything about the things that disturb them. So he acts, he goes beyond what most of us would, and but the script will lead me there and take me there. I don't need to work on that. What I need to know is who I am, where I am, what I want, when I want it, and how am I going to get it. That's what I need to know. And the rest of it is all the writer. And of course, I work with the writer. We talk about if I think there's an opportunity to expand. As I told you, some of it's a useless exercise because some of it ends up in the film. Saw 2, we got a much fuller window into what this guy was all about and what was on his mind.
And when you play a character like this intense, or go inside a really bad guy, do you ever have any trouble shaking it when you walk off the set?
Mm-mm.
No?
No. This guy is an engineer. He's a technician. He's a very well-read guy, a very deep thinker, very committed guy, very detail-oriented. I try and approach what I do when I play him in that area. I don't. I think my training in New York at the Actors Studio for many years. There's a misconception about method acting. Most people think that method acting is always from the inside out, and that you need to approach every role from an emotional point of view, and that would perhaps cause you to take it home with you and to not be able to put it aside when you leave. That kind of thing. Especially for a character like him. Now, if you were playing somebody like Tommy Lee Jones played in Executioner's Song, where the character is more fully, where you see his entire life and his relationships with his family and that kind of thing. What I'm saying is that this guy is a technician, so I approach him from a technical point of view, and so that I don't have to get involved emotionally in, although when you see Saw 3, if you see Saw 3, you'll see that his relationship with Amanda is, the director told me the other night, it's a very emotional film. So, but that, if there's emotion there between us as characters, I do my homework. I go over the material with her. We talk about it. But then, if there's emotion, it comes from connection. It comes from what's happening in the moment on the set. And hopefully, you're lucky and you get an actor or an actress who's accessible, who's available, who is on the same page, who's hungry in the same way as you are for something like that to occur. So, no, I don't take it home with me. I'd be crazy if I did. It's too painful. The stuff is too painful to do. I don't need to do that in order to create him.
So, when did you get bit by the bug? I know your mom's an actor. How did it start? Were you a kid? High school?
Yeah, I was very little. I was 9, and I did my first play. Life with Mother, I think it was, by Russell Crouse. I played the boy. And then, I moved on to the drums, and my mother, who was an actress, played leads in 3 films in England before she came here. Gave it up when she got married, but in her 40s in upstate New York, I was working in a summer stock theater, and I was working backstage and working on the fly floor and doing the follow spot. And I was 14 parking cars, so I really got bit by summer theater there. But my mother, they would bring packages into this summer theater, and they brought in Victor Jory and Charlton Heston, and Linda Darnell was supposed to play the female lead in those 2 plays, and she got sick. And my mother jumped in, believe it or not, and played. She was an incredible professional, and played the leads in Philadelphia Story and something else with Victor Jory and Charlton Heston. So I got to see her act. And she's English. She's 87. She lives in Massachusetts. And it was very last minute, and I spent hours on the dock with her, running lines. She jumped in at the last minute, and it was just a great experience for me to see her do that. And she still speaks with a British accent. It's very
What did your dad do?
distinguished. My father was in the radio business. He owned radio stations in Massachusetts and in upstate New York.
I know.
He was a morning guy. He owned the stations, but he would go in at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and do morning shows. That was his thing. He loved to do them.
Now, I know a lot of actors who are like, my kid's not going on to acting over my dead body. Were your parents, your mom, supportive of you?
Yeah, my mother always was.
Yeah?
My father thought I was a fool.
And did you decide?
So I went on to Boston University and studied communication arts. And in my senior year there, somebody asked me to do a television play of Genet's The Balcony, and I played the general. And I had a ball playing this guy, and I really enjoyed it. And right around that time, Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy came to BU to speak in a situation just like this. And I was sitting out there, and I looked at the 2 of them, and I thought, wow, they were so enthusiastic about what they did and so distinguished. And I thought, that's the life for me, man. You get to, you do fantasy, and look how lovely they look, and they seemed so well spoken, and life was good, and so so that was my senior year in college, and so I left I just took a left turn, put my mattress on top of my Studebaker Lark, and drove to New York. And I signed up for the neighborhood playhouse, studied with Sanford Meisner, and got thrown out of the neighborhood playhouse because after about 6 months, because I was for non-attendance of classes or for being late or whatever it was, because I was parking cars in the Hilton garage from midnight to 8, and then midnight to 8. From 6 o'clock at night to midnight, I was scraping zip strip off of the front of a bar that was being remodeled. So, somewhere in there, I was sleeping and drinking, and so I wasn't exactly the favorite guy at the neighborhood playhouse. So they threw me out.
When did you start getting did you start doing theater first? Getting cast in plays? Off Broadway?
Yeah.
Yeah? Is that your, would you call that your primary love, or do you kind of equally?
No, I always wanted to do film. I always saw myself being a film actor. I left the neighborhood playhouse, went directly across town that day to the actor's studio, not knowing how difficult it was to get into the studio. Auditioned whenever that opportunity presented itself, and then 6 months later they have a second audition. And I got into the studio. They took 3 men and 4 women that year, and I became part of that family and continued to work there. And it was a family to the extent that you always had a place to go, you always had a place to work, and it kept me going. By the way, during that period of time, I decided I would do extra work in films, and I probably did 50 or 60 films as an extra, as a background guy, because one, I could get paid to be close, and I wanted to see what it was about. I want to see if I could do that. You know, it would be like going to, you want to be an ultimate fighter, a fighting champion. Well, then go and either watch the fights and see if, do I think I could do that? Do you think, how do I? So I went and, you know, I worked on The Verdict for 3 weeks with Paul Newman.
Were you in the jury?
I wasn't in the jury. I was in the courtroom.
Yeah.
I was in the 3rd row of the courtroom. I was just a body, you know.
And what'd you think?
I loved it. You know, we're talking about Sidney Lumet as a director, James Mason, Paul Newman. You know, where can you sit and watch people do their craft and get paid to do it? You know what I mean? And I would talk to other actors at the studio, and they would say, "You what?" And I'd say, "Well," and they say, "Oh, not for me, man. 'Cause I want to be the guy." Or actually, it was a woman. She said, "I couldn't do that in a million years. I want to be the guy, the girl, the one, you know, the one that everyone's doing. Until that happens, I'm not going to go do that." And I understood that completely. But I didn't feel that way. I felt that there was a benefit. And, you know, I did stand-in work. I stood in for Nickel Williamson in a film called I'm Dancing as Fast as I Can with Jill Clayburgh about Valium addiction. And, you know, they would set up a shot in East Hampton, Long Island, and I would watch Nickel, and he would go to his trailer for 3 hours, and I would walk that shot down the dunes, through the grass, down the beach, and stop in front of the camera. And it really gave me a sense of where I needed to be and how long it, you know, the technical aspects of film, which are manifest. I mean, most of what you learn in acting class, so much of film and television is technical. You've got 7 tapes going off in your head. Stop there, move there. Sound guy has very specific requirements. When you put the thing down, don't put it down on the other person's line. You know, keep it moving here because of thus and so. Don't get out of the bed at the wrong time. You know, you've got all these tapes going off in your head at the same time, so you really need to be able to focus. It's not about acting a lot of the time, so you better have done your work at home. You better be ready, because the very first role that I did of any consequence was in Mississippi Burning. And the first scene I had was with Gene Hackman. I had like 2 lines, 3 lines. And the character I played was a guy that Hackman brings down from Washington to help solve the crime. Well, the implication was that as soon as Willem Dafoe gives him permission to bring these guys down, that he picks the 3 guys like that. He knows their background. The implication was that they had a relationship, that he knew what I could do. So he went, "I know the guy." So I thought, well, maybe Hackman's going to talk to me about, like, how did we know each other? You know, what was our background? You know, which is what they, you know, what you learn in acting class. What was, you know, and we would work out this scenario that, you know, we were in Vietnam together, or we were in this. So, you know, nothing. There's none of that. You know, Alan Parker, you know, who, bless him, He plucked me out. He was the guy. He was the guy. He took me out, and you're always looking for someone to recognize what you can do, and Alan Parker did. But Alan wasn't interested in talking about anything except the lights, you know, and don't act. That's what he would say to me. You know, he brought me in, went away talked to me, went away for 6 weeks, came back from Hollywood to New York, brought me in again, sat me in front of the camera. And Alan, he doesn't use casting directors, he sits you in front of the camera. He says, say the line, say the line, say the line. I said the same line over and over and over. Don't act, don't act, don't act. Tobin, don't act. Don't act. And
Did any part of you find that annoying?
no.
No?
No, I understood exactly what he meant. The camera sees everything. And if you're like, doing the camera sees all of that. It knows and I got down there, and it was either before or after, I had already done the scene with Hackman, and it came out really well, and he changed my line at the last minute, the line that we had been don't act on, which was, go get in the car. Hackman and I go into this cobbler shop, and there's a Klan guy running the cobbler shop, and Hackman goes out, and I go, do you have change of a 20? And Lester comes, and he takes the 20, and he goes over and he goes to give me change, and I slam his hand in the cash register, and I say, go get in the car, Lester, or else you're going to have a mighty hard time playing the piano once I've closed this drawer shut, which was the original line. Parker said, say, picking your nose. He told me this as we were walking into the room. He said, say, picking your nose. So I said, you're going to have a mighty hard time picking your nose once I've closed this drawer shut. And people laughed in the theater when every time, because they were ready for somebody to kick these guys' butts, and so it was kind of an uncomfortable, funny laugh, that gave me great pleasure. And so I guess my point is, do your homework, man, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And now, Saw 3, I did a lot of work with the girl who plays Amanda, Shawnee Smith, on what our relationship is. Because I'm in a different situation in this environment than I was when they were paying me scale to come from New York to be an FBI guy with Gene Hackman. I was just like, I didn't get into it. But when you occupy a certain position in the picture, then you want it to be as good as it can be. And so you negotiate the difficult waters, and they're not always easy, to finesse the writers and directors and producers to try to make things better if you can, and work with your fellow actor or actress to help do that, so that there's some texture, some substance, some humanity going on, even as the plot, which they're so plot driven, often it's all plot, more blood, more this. So it's our job to keep them honest, because no one's going to do that. Not that those things aren't important, plot and blood, they're important to them, but they can't do what I can do. I can make a window into a human being. And so that's my job. And I have to fight for that. If I don't fight for it, nobody will.
So what is your philosophy? Like, I've talked to some actors who will not, if they think something is really wrong and they have a substantial role in the movie, they're not just a day player, or they're not just there to service the plot, but they're there actually to be a real full-fleshed character. Are you going to give a director what he or she wants if you think it's wrong, and then hope that they'll see that it's wrong? Or are you going to sort of stand your ground and say, nope, not doing that, I don't think it's right?
I think that you'll probably have a sense of it. No, I think you're hired to give the director what he needs. If he's interested in what you have to say, you'll know it. You'll be able to sense it. if you don't like the line, you don't like that, you think you have something else in mind. Some directors, they couldn't care. They don't want to hear about it. I mean, some directors are interested. It depends also on how experienced they are. You know, yeah, Alan Parker. You know, I said to him once during Mississippi Burning, because we've been talking about this hat. I was riding around in a car with Hackman and Defoe, and we had thrown a hat out the window, and I was like, oh, Jesus, we threw the hat out. Somebody just did it, and he really liked it. But the question was, how are we going to get the hat back? Because we needed the hat. It was a plot point or something like that. And I was thinking about it, and, you know, I'd go home, and I was thinking about the hat and everything. I got this great idea for the hat. And I went to Alan. I said, Alan, I know how to do about the hat. I know what we can do, how we can do it. He said, Tobin, this is my film. I'll worry about the fucking hat. Well, that's pretty clear, you know. So you know, I'm like, okay, yeah, I was riding on my excitement about how well the scene had gone with Hackman, you know, my little picking your nose scene, and I thought, oh, he's going to love my ideas. You know, Alan. Yeah, so some guys like the Alan Parkers of the world, the Scorseses, the people, you know, they know what they're after and what they want to do, and they don't need me necessarily unless I'm De Niro or I'm, you know, and they have this working relationship. But if you feel strongly about it, yeah, absolutely, because you might be right, and he might go, Jesus Christ, that's right. Might be a plot point or something. You might save his ass, you know. So you just gotta, they'll be clear with you whether they're interested, you know.
So, is that how you made the transition from doing the background work to principal? Is through the Mississippi Burning role? Was that the beginning of ceasing the background work, or did you go back and forth for a while?
I came back from Mississippi Burning and went back to work in a restaurant. I didn't know where that was.
I've done some of my best acting in restaurants,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Well, you know, while we're on the subject, it's painful. You know, those jobs, if you think, I always thought that somehow someone was going to see what I could do. But in the meantime, if you give it up, if you can't, you know, I mean, I painted stairwells in apartment houses, and which go on for 35 stories, the underside of the stairwells. You know, I loaded mattresses on tractor trailer trucks. You can fit a lot of mattresses in a tractor trailer truck. You know, I had multiplicity of different jobs. Those are the jobs that keep you in the game. If you can stay in the game, somebody might find you. But if you're out of the game, you know, if you just decide, screw it, because being an actor, I mean, I saw Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy, but like my life in New York, you know, it affects your relationships, the poverty, the absence of knowing where the next job's going to come from, where the money's going to come from, the emotional roller coaster of it all, the people that you hang out with. It's not a secure or, you know, a thing that encourages a stable lifestyle. So
But
those
you've
jobs.
worked very steadily.
Since when?
Well, according to this resume, it looks like you've been pretty much plugging away for about 20 years.
Yes, that's true. But I was plugging away for 15 before that where I was not gainfully employed. You know, $150 a week. You know. All I can say is I didn't go into Starbucks. I would get, you know, of course, Starbucks is $2.95 a cup. I knew a place that was 60 cents a cup. That's where I went. So, you know, there wasn't a lot of money, and uh, I trusted, believed that I wasn't going to be cleaning the skids behind bars, the beer off the skids behind bars for the rest of my life. I believed it, and those jobs, though, kept me in the game so that I could work at night, so I could be available in the daytime to do that background work, to do if I wanted to do a play, if I was doing a play, the people in the restaurant would often let me, do this 2 week or 2.5 week thing. Sometimes I could switch lunch for dinner with somebody. So it was a flexible environment. And, but I remember very specifically coming back from Mississippi and going right back into that restaurant. I was there for at least another 6 months before, I started doing, I did a film for HBO in Canada, and then I did an Equalizer. I played a CIA guy on an Equalizer, and then it kind of gradually, once I left the restaurant, which I kept holding on because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I kept going back to work, and it was security for me. And yeah.
Are you still in New York, or do you live out here now?
No, I sold my apartment in New York. I'm living out here.
When did you make the big transition?
Well,
Where the ocean's on the wrong side.
Yeah, my oldest son lives in New York, so I spend a lot of time in New York. But no longer having a residence there. I've been there probably 9 times in the last year, so I go back and forth to New York a lot. But I'm really living out here now.
So when did you feel like it started to shift for you, and you were noticing that you were starting to make your living as an actor, and what occurred for you as a performer, as an artist? Did anything shift as a result of not having to go back to the day job anymore?
I gradually learned. When I first came here, I got hired to do a pilot in a Stephen Cannell series called Broken Badges. And I just did the pilot, was the lead bad guy. Somebody told me in New York, you could probably make a lot of money playing bad guys in Hollywood. At the Actors Studio, a director. I was doing some scene about Thomas Jefferson, or something like that, and I was, this thing. And I get to the end, and there's 100 people there. It's like this, only there was maybe, 150 people there. And Catelyn Adams, who was a director, was moderating that day because Ellen Burstyn couldn't come. She says to me, "What's going on with your blah, blah, blah about what I was doing, and were you thinking about this, and were you thinking about that?" And she said, "But by the way, what's going on with your career, Tobin?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on this material." She said, "Well, you've been working on material for a while, a number of years here, I think that you ought to go to Hollywood and I think you could play bad guys wonderfully." And I said, I heard that. And I didn't understand that at all, because I saw myself playing sort of romantic leads, and I did, yeah. And so I went over to my agent, who was a one-man show over on 7th Avenue, guy who loved character actors, and they said I could go and do bad guys, and he said, "Yeah, I think she's right." And it was shortly after that Alan Parker hired me to do Mississippi Burning. So, that guy was an FBI agent. But bad guy, good guy doesn't make it. It's if you have edge and power. It just depends on the side of the law that you're on, because Kevin Spacey played a lot of bad guys, but he's also played a lot of good guys.
So what have, over the years, what has become your favorite and least favorite parts of the business aspect of show business, since we don't call it show art? What have you come to enjoy, and what have you come to loathe?
Enjoy it doesn't sound like, but the technical aspect of film and television, the necessity to focus, to concentrate, I enjoy that because it's like negotiating a minefield. As I said, I don't. Yeah, you do a lot of acting, but your primary responsibilities are to the director, to sound, to film, to the camera operator, to your fellow actors. There's a lot going on. So I like juggling all of those balls. And I remember there was a door upstairs in the actor's studio, and people used to come late all the time. And they would come through that door, and some actors, it would just drive them crazy when people would come late. And I always used to think, if I can't continue doing what I'm doing on this stage with a door opening and closing and somebody walking up the side and sitting in their seat, then what am I going to do, with all of the distractions that there are, and there are many, in theater or film or whatever, So I like that part of it. For an actor to have an opportunity for people to come to you and say, we have this thing we'd like you to do, and then you have a chance to read something. It's an efficient way to work. This business of running after casting directors and, who have no essential power except to move you forward, it's such a crapshoot. That's what I hate. The amount of time, I think they ought to pay actors to audition,
I don't think you'll get any argument here.
It's annoying, man. You spend 6 hours of your time for these guys who don't know what they want. You go in and you audition. I love it. It was just wonderful. And then they hire some guy who's 350 pounds with his nose all bent over it doesn't look anything like it. And they say, no, we went with the guy with one arm, they have no concept. And because it doesn't cost them anything to have all these people traipse in and wait for an hour or 2 hours, plus read the script, plus drive home and spend their gas. It doesn't cost them anything to do that. So why not? I do the same thing, So I just think it would be really cool for that actors, there should be a basic fee, $50, whatever it is, for actors to go in and audition. And then maybe they can make up their goddamn mind about what they want.
Yes, I always find it more comforting when I walk in and there's 10 of me rather than me, the 17-year-old Asian boy, and the 70-year-old, African-American woman. Then I'm like, they don't have a clue what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. Do you find that, I'm sure now you get a fair amount of offers. Are you still in a position where you must audition? And if so, has your relationship with auditioning changed at all? Your process?
Yeah. So the bad guy thing worked out, okay? Now, it's great if they can see you as anything. 95% of the people who try to get in this business and work, they don't see them as anything. Nobody can see, they're like, not this, they're not this, so they're not, so they don't end. But if they can nail you as something, and you can make a success out of something, because there's not a lot of imagination out there. And so my point is this. It's my job. If I want to do something else other than play bad guys, then I need to, you should ask me about auditioning. If I read a script and there's a part in it that I really want to play, but I know it's going to be, now, my name's a little bigger than it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I can help get some funding to get film, depending on the genre that it's in. But if it's a part I really want to play and it's important to me and I believe I can do it, the only way I'm going to get that part is for me to go in and read for it. So why not? I will do that if it's important material, because I believe, the same as I thought someone was going to find me like Alan Parker, I believe I have not even begun to to play what I'm capable of playing, because I haven't been able to figure that out yet. You know, I'm working on it, but if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. But it's my responsibility. I don't, you know, we're talking about typecasting, and typecasting is a good thing in that, you know, would I prefer to be Meryl Streep? Yeah, probably. Because Meryl can move, you know. Well, but I'm happy to be me because I, you know, I'm playing this guy. You know, I've played a lot of different guys, but I'm playing this guy that I can bring something to. And that's what we all try to do. You know, when we act, we all just try to bring something, bring as much as we can and have it ring true on film, because the camera knows, you know, it knows and it sees. And so it's, if I'm gonna, you know, begin to do those things that I think I'm capable of, I'm doing what I think I'm capable of, but I think there's more. My sense is that there's more. How do I get from here to there? Keep working hard and keep reading material and keep trying to do the best I can, not to say, hey, I got to get out of this, I got to get out of this. Well, it's helped my name enormously doing what I'm doing. So,
Do you also write?
yeah.
Have you considered writing yourself a role?
Yeah. I just sold a script, wrote a wonderful role for myself in it, and it was a marvelous script, and it's tied up in litigation at the moment. But there's a lot of other writers. You know, I'm working with some guys developing a television series right now. It's you know, very experienced television guys. And they called me and they said, come meet with us. I sat and talked to them. There's special effects guys involved. And they had produced a film called Door to Door with Bill Macy.
Bill
I don't know if
Macy.
you, yeah.
Wonderful film.
Wonderful film. And so my sense was these guys, even though they function on a lot of different levels, they understand what good character development is. And so we're in the midst of developing this series that I'm excited about, and I'm producing there as well as acting and writing, and I'll do some directing also. So,
Do you have a preference between film and television? Do you like going back and forth between them?
I prefer film.
Because?
More space, more time.
More time
travel.
in between jobs, you mean?
More time
To do the job.
to do the job.
Yeah.
Depending on what the location is, you get to travel to. I mean, I when I went to the Deep South to do Mississippi Burning, I had been in New York City and New Jersey for a long time. I had not traveled a great deal, and when I had a chance to go to the Deep South and be paid to go there to see where the blues was born in the Mississippi Delta, and to see those battlefields down there, and to get paid at the same time, I drove. Most of us, the town of Philadelphia, Mississippi, obviously didn't welcome us to come there where the crime was committed. So they used a town in Alabama, and we moved. The company flew from Jackson, Mississippi to Alabama, but I drove with Kevin Dunn up the Natchez Trace in a car through Philadelphia, and spent the day in Philadelphia looking at where the crime was committed. And I mean, that was history, you know, and to be paid. See, people that say, oh, hey, we're shooting this film in St. Kitts. Well, I'd rather go. I'm interested in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you know. I mean, I'm interested in going to real places, you know, places where there's some history, and, you know, I just am drawn to that, you know. I like it when real locations are used. So I prefer film to television because of that reason, you know.
Now, one of the things we do is we open it up to the questions from our fellow thespians here. So I'm going to start with the ones that were given to me a week in advance because I figured they really deserve to be asked. They were in my little package, and it says, you made your part as Bauer on La Femme Nikita into a wonderfully three-dimensional character, and in my opinion, the best quote-unquote slime of the week ever on that series. Did you enjoy playing him, and what was it like working with a cast that was shooting its very first episode? This from Shirley. Is Shirley here? Well, there she is. Got it to me very early. Early from Shirley.
Shirley, that actually was episode 3. It was written as episode 3, but Joel Surnow, who went on to become the executive producer of 24 and was the executive producer of La Femme Nikita, was uncertain about the chemistry between Peter Wilson and Roy Dupree. And so before he shot the pilot, he didn't want to get into the pilot. He wanted to see what their chemistry was. So he went to episode 3, brought me to Toronto, and we shot episode 3. And he took episode 3 to Universal and sold the series based on episode 3. Then they shot the pilot and they used that. So that's how that worked. Loved working with Peter Wilson. Very talented person. Very responsive. Very accessible and available.
And not bad to look at either.
Yeah.
Kind of pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They had a lot of cheesy stuff in that episode, and one of
For those of us who don't know Bauer, what made him slime of the week? What was he?
Well, he was just kind of a lech, He was involved in nefarious deeds all over the planet, but he also was leching over PETA, and there was this dancing scene where they were supposedly in their cups, the 3 of them, and he's dancing with Roy and PETA at the same time. And I remember pulling Joel Surnow, saying to the director, "Man, the scene is stupid. You cannot have this. There's too much dialogue. There's too much dialogue." Very often things are overwritten. I remember doing a thing with Willie Nelson once, and what's the guy's name? San Francisco guy?
Don Johnson.
Don Johnson, yeah. The beauty of having a producer as an actor is that you can change stuff on the set. It just gets changed. He was an elevator scene, and Don Johnson said, "Too much, way too much dialogue. Lose that, and you cut to the chase, and you're out." So the same thing was going on with this dancing scene where I'm dancing with the both of them, and the implication was kind of like I was into him and into her, and we were all into each other. But I said I couldn't get him to cut the dialogue. Finally, I got the producer to come down to the set, and I said, "It doesn't work the way it is. It's not going to work." And they eventually trimmed the scene, and it made it easy for all of us. But Peter was into it too. She realized it wouldn't work, and it was kind of ugly the way it was written.
And we have Monique. Is Monique here? I think we sort of answered Monique's question. And I'm going to go to Jenny Clark. Jenny here? Jenny wants to know...
Where's Jenny?
You're representing Jenny. Okay, good. Otherwise, I was going to say...
Who's representing Jenny?
Sue.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We know you're a writer. If you could write one character for yourself, as in for you to play, what kind/who would it be and why? I'm thinking it's that Tom Hanks romantic lead.
No, I'm not. Being the guy next door is not what I'm at. But like the roles that like Bill Macy, that like in Door to Door, or in Forrest Gump, or there's so many different wonderful dimensions and shapes of humanity that I'll play any of those. I'm not thinking we go from bad guys to the guy next door. The guy next door is, that's taken by, I don't know, some guy in a plaid shirt. I don't think that's going to be me. But there's lots of character roles. I love period pieces. I love westerns and farmers and, you know, guys, people who work with their hands. And those are the kind of characters that I think are rich and that I'd like to play. So that's what I'd write if I was going to write something. It would be some kind of a period thing that.
Which period would you go for?
1830s.
Here, America?
Rocky Mountains, yeah, something like that.
I'd do that just
West.
to go to the location.
Yeah,
That'd be so pretty.
absolutely. One of my favorite films is a film called Jeremiah Johnson that Sidney Pollack directed. By the way, I didn't know that. It was one of my favorite films, and then I got to work for Sidney in the firm, but I still didn't know he directed that film. But it's that period when the country just has begun to move to the west, but there are people. Those guys were like astronauts. They were living
on the edge.
On the edge.
Yeah. We have a question from Stephen Wishnoff. Is that how you say it? Wishnoff? Well, he's not here, dang it, but I'll ask it. When working on a project as intense and inherently violent as Saw, what do you do to break the tension after you've spent the day breaking bones?
Go to the Sky Dome and watch baseball.
Who's your team?
My team? Mm-hmm. The Yankees.
Oh, there you go. Mm-hmm. You would have to be the Yankees or the Mets.
Yeah, they were. You know, I was raised in Massachusetts, so you know I grew up loving the Red Sox. But I lived in New York for 28 years, so I got swept up in the Billy Martin, Reggie Jackson, Greg Nettles, 78, 79 thing, and so yeah, I'm a Yankee fan, and I'm a fan of Steinbrenner's because he cares whether they win or not.
So we have a question here from Amy, A-Y-M-I. There she is. Amy wants to know, what's the best advice your mom, Eileen Bell, gave you for your career?
She gave me a little gold medallion from Saint Genesius, who is the patron saint of actors that I have carried around in my wallet for many, many years. And she had it when she was acting, and she just gave it to me. She, to be honest with you, she has not given me much acting advice.
She must be incredibly proud of you, though.
Yeah, she is, because she has a shelf full of films, and
of yours?
Yes, she has a shelf full of films of mine. Everything I do, she's got on that shelf, and so she is incredibly proud. She was kind of blown away, though. She lives in a place in Massachusetts, and it's kind of a combination between a condo and a not an old age home, but where you can get support if you need it. And I was there 3-4 weeks ago, and the staff are soft. They had all seen Saw, and most of
freaks.
Yeah, and so they were just blown away. And she was like, "Wow," because a lot of I coach Little League baseball, and my friends have never even seen this film. There's a whole group of adults that don't know from Saw, and then there's the 15 to 25-year-olds who are just passionate about it, and it's just an amazing phenomenon, and a lot of fun for me because I'll be approached by 5 kids with skateboards, and they'll be like, "Man, you're the guy, you're the." And I say, "Yeah," and they say, "Oh, we love Saw." I say, "Well, why? What do you love about Saw?" And they say, "It teaches you stuff." And I say, "Well, what stuff does it teach you?" And they said, "Well, like when you said to the guy, this is the guy being Detective Matthews, who in Saw 2, I have a lot of scenes with Donnie Wahlberg. When you said to the guy, if you knew the exact moment of your own death, how would it change the way you live your life, detective? You'd walk through the park differently. You'd smell things differently. That glass of water would taste different to you. For whatever reason, stuff like that captures the imagination of these 15 to 25-year-olds, and they're thinking about stuff. They're thinking about, if you knew the exact moment of your own death, how would it change how you live your life? That's one thing. There's a whole host of others that they're just kind of tuned into that they talk about. So I'm grateful to have this window, to talk with. But that having been said, I was on a field trip recently on Catalina, chaperoning my 11-year-old, and in the cafeteria, they're like, pss, 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 and said, "Oh, here we go," and they kind of come over to me, and they say, "Are you the guy? Are you the guy in Charmed?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." Because I was like, I played this blind guy in one episode of Charmed, and these girls were totally into Charmed. And what's amazing to me is how different tastes people have. Some people approach me and they'll say, "Stargate, SG-1. I did one episode of Stargate. I played Omok." They know my character's name, and so it's wonderful how different people's taste runs, and these girls were very impressed that I had worked with the three witches on Charmed, so.
Well, we have a question here from David, who wants to know if, he says, have our seats been booby-trapped or rigged to explode?
Depends on the deeds that you've been doing. Who's David? You here? Hi. Hello, David. Yeah, I see you got the one closest to the exit.
Tim Abel? Well, I'll save it then. I'll wait for it.
All right.
Byron Q. Which schools of thought or technique have you pulled from the most to develop characters?
Who am I? Where am I? What do I want? When do I want it? And how am I going to get it? That's where I start. Obviously, I start with the script. But Ellen Burstyn said to me once, "You're lazy, Tobin." She said, how many pages have you written on your who am I, where am I, what do I want, when do I want it, how am I going to get it? And I was like, well, I got a half a page on the who am I, got 3/4 of a page on this. She said, well, how come? I said, well, I started on the who am I, but I got confused because I thought that doesn't fit on the who am I. It belongs in the what do I want. And so I used that as an excuse not to continue. It was just, totally. And if you do, so by the way, when I did The Firm, I ended up with 137 pages on why there would be a long, blonde-haired Nordic guy, the only non-lawyer in the film, stands out like a sore thumb, functioning as a tail. He's tailing Tom Cruise. Why? What's the rationale for that? What?
And what did you conclude after 137 pages?
Oh man, I had my whole background. The guy's name is the Nordic Man. So as I recall, Wilfred Brimley played the head of security of the law firm. I connected myself to Wilfred and how we were connected and why he brought me there. I tried to get Sidney to put a scene in the film. He smiled. The short answer to the question is that I determined that I'd spend a lot of time leaning against buildings looking at maps like a tourist watching, this kind of, like backpack over the shoulder like a tourist. If you spend time in any city, you see people from Scandinavia, whatever, try and find their way around Memphis, Tennessee, which is where we were. So you can create I just had to create a strong rationale for why I looked the way I looked and why I was where I was, because it really made no sense. And it certainly wasn't in the script, nor was it going to be in the script. So I was trying to get Sydney to stand me up against a building to do my, doing a tourist thing and watching Tom from doing that, so I could establish that. It wasn't important to him. So I just did it myself, all constantly developed. And you know what happens when you do that? When you ask yourself those questions, you start with one question. That becomes 2. That becomes 4. That becomes, you say, all right, you get to hear it and you say, I'm tired. He's tired. Okay, well, why is he tired? What did he do last night? Question number 1. Where did he do it? Oh, he was with so-and-so? Who's she? Who's she to him? So the questions just keep getting, so you start with 1 and it's like a triangle, and it just, by the time you start to roll in the film, you haven't answered all the questions. You never will. They're an unending number of questions. Same as your life.
Do you do that every time? Do you do that kind of writing for every role?
I do, yes. I do my damnedest, because I'm afraid that I'll go mad if I don't.
Why would you go mad?
Because you're faking. I don't feel comfortable if I don't know. You know what you did from the moment you got up this morning, where you got up, what bed you got out of, what the room looked like with the blinds down. You know where your clothes were. You know what the alarm clock. You know it all because it's real. You know from the moment when you walked out and you walked into the bathroom, the water had been turned off by the guy. You went downstairs, there was no English muffins. All of the details of your life are all laid out because they're real. But an actor needs to create every single detail that you possibly can. Not necessarily needs to, because you can do it any damn way you want to. I just know how I feel, that I want to know. What does he mean by that when he says that? What does he mean? Does he mean this?
Well, what if you
or is
come
it
up-
this?
what
Or
if
is
you-
it this? It could be shades of,
What if you come up with all that and the director says, no, I don't see it that way?
I don't tell him. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what I'm doing.
Well, but I mean, whatever you're doing based on this, and he goes, I want us to do this differently.
Okay, well then I have not had that experience. That a director has said to me, what you're doing is all wrong. First of all, he wouldn't have hired me in the first place, usually. Second of all, usually it's an adjustment more than anything else, which means keep doing everything that you're doing and shade it slightly. I had a director say to me, I really like what you're doing, but show me more of your blues. And then I was like, okay. Some directors are very mental. They want to talk about all the details and everything. But the best ones, my experience has been, say very little. They just kind of ease you over, edge you over from where you are to a slightly different thing.
Do you have a favorite?
Favorite director? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Darren Lynn Bousman, who directed Saw 2 and Saw 3. Relatively inexperienced director. When he started with these 2 films, he's shepherded them both through difficult producers who are demanding, and through Lionsgate, which is a company that's very experienced and has very specific thoughts and desires regarding the final product. Darren, when an idea comes to the door that's better, he invites it in. He's not afraid of it. And I appreciate that a lot. He
incorporates.
Yeah. He sees what's going on, and he will say, okay, I just know what we just shot. We cannot go from here to here. It's not going to play. He sees it, so he all of a sudden, there was something surprising happened in the scene before. Now the scene after doesn't fit the way it's worked on the page. But if we shape it, it'll work better. So I appreciate that very much about him. He edits in his head, as he's shooting, so he knows what he needs and how he needs it. So I'm gonna give Darren the favorite director award. I feel comfortable in his hands.
My favorite was my second director I ever had was Anthony Perkins. And I loved him because he was great with actors and he was great with the crew. I've never seen usually directors tend to fall in, they're really good with the crew and the lights, or they're really good with the actors, but he crossed that line. And I'm sure you're like me. I mean, and all of us have had experiences now working with first-time directors, because now if you graduate from 7th grade and, have done a 10-minute short, you can direct a film. And I unfortunately find that a lot of directors, first-time directors, fall into one of two categories. Either they are being rolled over by their DP or the forces that be, or they're so worried about losing control, they're micromanaging everything and they don't allow that space like you're talking about, Darren. Have you had any like really difficult experiences with directors?
Generally not. Yeah. I don't expect a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
a good idea.
Because you might not get it, so you better be prepared to be self-sufficient, not look for any approval from the. If they don't say anything to you, my experience has been good. If they don't, that's. So I have a lot of respect for directors because of their work schedule. The actors get to break in between. When we have, some time in between shots, everybody's on the director. The hair people have a problem, the set people have a problem. So they don't get a lot of downtime. It's a hard job.
What do you look for when choosing roles, besides the paycheck?
That's a big factor.
Well, and let me ask you that. Have you made many decisions to do a role to pay the rent? Or have you mostly...
Oh, absolutely. Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Have you ever turned anything down?
And they know that, I mean, if you're independently wealthy, you can negotiate a lot better because you don't...
You don't care.
You care, or you care less,
yeah.
About the money. So,
Are you do you not go in for and not audition for things that just don't resonate for you anymore?
Yeah, I do. I also, I think you reach a point where I say, my time's too valuable to give to this stuff. First of all, I've done a lot of television. I've been there and I've done it. And if I can avoid, the startup time to do one episode of television, to get yourself where you can do something, with this part is sometimes as much time for me as it is to do a whole film. So, it just, unless it's something special, then I will go that extra mile.
Like your character on 24? Was that something special?
Joel Surnow came to me. Joel it was the guy who did La Femme Nikita, the third episode that they used to sell the thing. He tried to hire me in the first season of 24. Fox wanted Dennis Hopper. And so Dennis Hopper played the guy. They killed him somewhere along the line, beginning of season 2, I think. At the end of season 2, for the last 5 episodes of the season, Joel called me and he said, I want you to play these 5 episodes. I said, great. So he called me his lucky penny because of that third episode thing that he had used to sell an entire series to Universal. So I was grateful for that. 24 was very successful. It's very important and very good. And, managers and agents will tell you this, oh, you got to do this show. It's Monk. It's a great show. And, they're always pitching one show or another. But it's true on some level that to be in 24 when it's this popular show is, I don't get it. But it doesn't matter. If I can go and I can do the job, the fact that so many people love that show is just a phenomenon. It's just a much loved show and very, very successful. So to be a guy on that show is great. It's good for your career. It's good for your exposure. Did I love the material? I spent a lot of time on the phone. I went to Joel. I said, Joel, I think the guy's getting acupuncture he's a very mental guy. And he said, what? I said, yeah. He said, I think he's getting acupuncture in this scene. Why don't we do that? He said, okay, and so we did the first scene where I actually was getting acupuncture while he was manipulating the world, whatever it is that Peter Kingsley was doing. Yeah, it was a great show to work on, and I was pleased to do it. I got killed at the end of the season, and by the way, you have to know what your bottom line is in this business. You have to know. You have to know it in negotiation. You have to know. When I went into that,
when you say bottom line, you mean where you're willing to walk away?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to know. When I went in to do 24, they were putting clothes on me. Joel came in. He said, I was starting to shoot the next morning. He said, we got some stuff for you. Boy, do we have some stuff for you. We wrote the whole thing. We wrote the whole thing. I said, you what? He said, we sat down this morning. We rewrote the whole thing. I was like, oh, okay. Come in my office when you're finished. Finished with the clothes. Go in his office. He says, read this. I'm starting to shoot the next morning. I am not a quick study. I need to work hard on lines because I need to forget the lines. I need to be able, and there's a journey that you make from your brain to your tongue, or at least I make, from knowing something to, and that takes days. It takes the passage of days. I can know it here, but not be able to say it necessarily. This is a brain, this is a muscle. So the journey from here to here takes a couple of days to really get fluid. I went in, I read the stuff. I walked outside. I was kind of speechless about it. I just took it, and I was like walking, zombieing along the corridor. This guy comes up to me and says, well, I hope you like to fly. I said, what do you mean? Oh, because there was a scene in a helicopter. I was sure they were going to shoot it on a stage, He said, yeah, we're going out 3:30 tomorrow, Van Nuys Airport, helicopter. I don't like to fly. And nobody told me that they were going to go up in a real helicopter. So I go home.
Actually, usually they don't like the actors to go up in the real helicopter.
Well, they felt they needed it. And I went home and I vegged on two things. One was the script rewrite. Second was the helicopter. And I called my agent at the time, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this show. Let them hire somebody else. And this is 5 episodes, the hottest show on television. One, I said, I can't do a good job. They can't throw this shit at me at the last minute and think that I'm kind of, let them hire a fucking machine. I'm not that. He knows what kind of actor I am. I cannot do that like that. 2, I'm not going up in any helicopter. If they want to, figure it out, they do whatever they want to do. He says, see, but you got to, So I called my lawyer, and I said, do I have to do? He said, yeah, you got to do, So it was agonizing phone calls, and what am I going to do? And we got 3:30 the next day. So we're in the morning, so I get a call from Joel in the morning. So my agent has called the producer, my lawyers, and I'm like in a swivet. I get a call from Joel, and he says, what's the problem? I said, you know what kind of an actor I am. I said, I can't do that. I said, He said, what can we do to solve this? And I said, well, number one, can I say, kind of ballpark it? Do you need it? Because I always try to do it word for word. If I like the writing and I think the writing's there, I try to do what's on the page. If I can ballpark it, and you're not going to worry about it, I don't care what you say. Give me the guy. It's the guy I want. Do it any way you want to say it. Okay, that's number one. He said, number two, I'm not going up in any helicopter. He says, yeah, that's a problem. And so he says, oh, we'll shoot it on the ground. I said, great, done. But I knew. So they shot it on the ground, they green screened it behind the windows of the helicopter. It didn't look any different. It was so much faster and easier. And what the hell they were going up in this helicopter for, and be rolling around in this thing. They had enough trouble shooting it just sitting on the ground, So the fact was that I knew, I didn't want to lose 5 episodes of 24, but I knew if you've ever suffered through a television show or a film where you can't come up with the words, then you know why I did that, because it's agony. And if you have certain standard as an actor that you want to be, I mean, this guy, Peter Kingsley, he knew what he had in his mind. He was a smart guy. He wasn't like, struggling over the words. So I knew what my bottom lines were. I knew I wasn't going up in this helicopter. So I told him what my bottom lines were. He fixed them, and that was the end of it. But you got to know, it wasn't like maybe. It wasn't maybe. I would have looked like crap if I had done it for words. So I did the scene in the helicopter that night on the tarmac at Van Nuys Airport, and I ballparked. I knew the points that I had to make. I was talking about Jack, whatever his name is, Jack Bauer. Yeah, right. And I knew the points that I had to make, and I just ballparked it. And it wasn't word for word, but he got the guy. And that's what he wanted. He wanted the information and the guy.
Rock on. Did Tim come back? Well, I'm asking his damn question. What is your most memorable favorite role? I guess memorable to you.
Oh, man. I got to go back to Mississippi Burning, because the sweetness of that first scene with Gene Hackman, I've done four films with him since then. But the sweetness of, I was nervous. All we had to do was walk into this cobbler's shop, and he had to say a few lines to this cobbler. And I had to look around, and then he leaves, and I have to get the cobbler out to the car. But I was nervous in the rehearsal. I knew I felt nervous, and I didn't know quite what to do about it. I had figured out what I wanted to do in the room, but I felt really on edge. And I didn't want to be nervous in this scene. I didn't think this FBI agent was nervous. I thought he was powerful and smooth. And so I didn't know how to get from nervous to no nervous. But I thought about oil, about how the texture of oil is and how it moves. And so by the time 3 hours had passed and they had lit this cobbler shop, and we had to walk into this cobbler shop, I didn't want Gene Hackman to be walking in behind me and me to be walking in like, I thought, fuck, Gene Hackman, he's going to be walking in. He's not going to be nervous, so I'm not going to be nervous either. So I'm thinking oil. So I'm just like kind of oiling my way through this scene. And, I reach up and there's this bag hanging down there, and I'm just touching everything like, you got change of a 20? I take my wallet out, and I'm just thinking oil. Strasberg used to talk about give yourself something to concentrate on, So I knew my lines. I knew where I was walking. So I just kept feeling oil. Because it would slow me down. It wouldn't make me jerky. I didn't want to be jerky. It was what I didn't want. I knew it, nothing jerky. Until, boom, he closes the cash register on the guy's hand. That's jerky. But nothing up till there, because I didn't want to
Give it away.
give it away. Yeah. Exactly.
Have you ever taught acting?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with, I've done some coaching, and I've worked with some people. And when you work at the actor studio, we're always talking about it. Mm-hmm. So, you know, but have I made a business out of it? No.
We have a question here. Ooh, this is a great name. Tennessee Winston Luke. There you go. He wants to know, how do you compare yourself with other players like Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, etc.?
Yeah. I don't, but I know what because people have been asking me this, how does it feel to be a horror icon? Like Freddy and stuff. I said, I don't know. Great, if that's what I am, but I don't think about that, and I don't view him that way at all. I mean, I view him as a guy, and all the rest of that is someone else's, it's marketing, or it's whatever it is that I don't have any control over. If I'm going to be a horror icon, then so be it.
And I understand you're not a fan of horror films.
Okay. I didn't use Jacob's Ladder. Wonderful film.
That's the one with Tim Robbins?
Right.
That's an interesting film.
There are horror films and there are horror films. What's the one with Christopher Walken where he looks at things and they light on fire? The Dead Zone.
Stephen King.
Yeah. All right. That film, The Dead Zone, without Christopher Walken, would have been a film about a guy who goes around and looks at things and turns and they light on fire. Very plot, but I cared about him. He drew me in to this thing. You can do the same thing with horror that you can do with romantic comedy, with period pieces, with westerns, you can make people, you can draw people in, you can make them, but it's been the weak stepsister of film for so many years that and it's because of weak scripts and stuff like. But there are many horror films that have distinguished themselves. The Exorcist was a very well put together film. Do I like to go to theaters and be scared? No. Some people do. I had a friend in New York, and she used to say, "Oh, I love it. It's visceral. It grabs me. It's something I can't deny. It just takes me over." And I was like, "Oh, that's what it's about." So I understand it. I just never liked it very much myself. I was like, I'm much more.
Well, would you consider a movie like is Seven a horror film? Like, I wouldn't call that a horror film, but that to me is like way more interesting, intriguing, and horrifying than like Chainsaw, whatever the hell it is.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's like, am I a sci-fi fan? No. Do I like Star Wars? No. Am I interested in Luke Skywalker as a character? No. Did I like Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Yes. Better. Because I was interested in Richard Dreyfuss. I felt it was more realistic. It was more grounded. It wasn't so airy. But there are those who love Star Wars and love that thing. So, everyone's got different sensibilities. I loved the little girl and I cared about them. I related to them on some level, going home and it just drew me in. But that's my particular bent, my particular taste. So if you say, do you like science fiction? The broad answer is no. But the small answer about horror, the same thing, is yeah, I do, because there's a lot that you can do with horror. And the audience for Saw I mean, there's many more women going to horror films now than used to go. And they're looking for other elements and in the story. And you can do the same thing with horror as you can do with all those other things. When was the last time you saw a horror film in the Academy Awards? The Exorcist, probably, or nominated, you know.
I was
Silence
gonna say,
of the
Silence
Lambs.
of the Lambs. Would you consider
Okay.
that a horror film?
Yeah, well. Mm-hmm. But I said once I didn't like that I wasn't a horror fan. I said it once. And it comes back. I was just in London for 3 days and everybody asked me the same thing. Well, I understand you're not a horror fan. I said, well, yes and no. You know, it's not either yes or no. It just depends on the texture of the material.
Who would you like to work with that you haven't yet
Dustin Hoffman.
as an actor?
Yeah. I think he's a smart man, good sense of humor, and very talented. I mean,
How about the aforementioned Meryl Streep?
yeah,
That would be my fantasy.
yeah. I think John Cusack's a great actor.
And how about directors? Any directors you'd like to work with?
No one comes to mind particularly at the moment. If I think of someone, I'll let you know.
Do you feel at this point in your life that are you one of the actors who have to act?
Well, you know, there was always that old thing, well, who should become an actor and who shouldn't? And Strasberg used to say, if you have to, then you should. If you don't have to, then you should do something else because the price is too high. You have to ask yourself that question, do I have to? And do I feel, no. Do I feel that I have to? If you took it away from me, I might feel more like I have to. But would I be happy for the rest of my life coaching Little League baseball and painting and working out and no, I don't think so. I think I have a lot that I really want to do that I haven't been able to make happen yet, and so that kind of it's in the game. You know, the challenge of finding your way through the maze is fun. That's the fun, you know. And you know, there's a little bit of it's luck, and a lot of it's hard work, and a lot of it is hanging in, and so I have a lot I still really want to accomplish. So I think the answer would be, yeah, I do have to act. I think we have an opportunity to bring something to a crazy, insane world. Now you say, all right, well, who is the Saw guy talking about, you know? But, you know, the world is full of violence, real violence. And I don't feel as an artist, it's my job to legislate over about whether it's okay to have violent films or not violent films. I don't concern myself with that, but I personally feel that the violence in the world, the fact that we have not been able to figure out how to stop that. So when violence occurs in film, I'm not as concerned about that as I am about what the realities of life are. That concerns me. But in film, don't go. Don't watch it. You know, don't see it. Don't show it to my 11-year-old. I'm not going to force someone else to see it. So What was the question?
I think you answered it. Do you still do you feel called at all to do theater, or are you at this point finding the film
Yeah,
much more compelling?
yeah, no, I'm talking to somebody about doing something in New York now. I've been looking for the right material to do. I did a play in Los Angeles a year and a half, or 2 years ago, and it just really reminded me.
What was it?
I did it at the Santa Monica Playhouse, and it was called Home. I don't remember the title. It was a family of 4 or 5 people. It was directed by Rick Pagano, the casting director. He directed it, and doing a play is an enormous amount of work. It requires a tremendous amount of time. You have to be willing to make that commitment. You have to know what you're getting into. And I had just finished a pilot and was late getting into it. Once again, it was one of those lines things. I had to work tremendously hard to learn the lines. I paid a very high price for coming in late to the rehearsal process, but I really wanted to do the play. And I was glad I did it, but it really reminded me. Oh, and the director, he would come in after the performance and he would say, "Okay, we got to cut a minute off it," and in some way he was right, because he was really talking about pace, and if it was too slow, it didn't play properly. So that's the way he did his directing. We got to pick it up. We got to go faster. We got to cut a minute off it, and he was right. It played better at that pace, and there was a couple of scenes in it that were really fun and strong to do. The rest of it was kind of disconnected, and so it wasn't the most rewarding experience I've had. But it reminded me of how much work there is in doing a play, how little money is involved, and so I look forward to doing some more theater. But you have to know what you're getting into and why you're doing it. Doing theater in Los Angeles. Not a lot of people go to the theater in Los Angeles. I mean, a lot of people go to the theater in Los Angeles, but if you start saying, well, is this going to help my career? Who's going to see this? Whereas, you do a Sam Shepard play in New York, it's, there's more, the press, the orientation to it is just different than it is in Los Angeles. So sometimes it becomes, a career question. Sometimes it becomes a time question, a money question. Then there's the material and all of the things that I'm sure you all know.
Do you feel at this point in your career, I've always, that you have more choices and that you like your choices better?
Yes. No question about it. Being involved creatively in the Saw situation, I mean, Jigsaw wasn't terribly well drawn. And I thought that there were opportunities for him, without him getting too preachy, to touch on things that raised questions. And the scenes in Saw 2 with Donnie Wahlberg, actually, they're a testament to Donnie as much as me. I danced around him a lot, but when I first met him in Toronto, and he looked at these scenes and he said, "I can't say this. This is bullshit. I wouldn't say this." I said, "Oh, what would you say?" He said, "Well, I'd say this, or I'd say this, or I'd say." We worked for 2 weeks before we ever shot.
With the writer?
With the director, who was a co-writer. And that was Darren. And we shaped those scenes, because it's not about the information, it's about how. There's a cat and mouse game going on. What are the stakes? I have his son. I'll give you an example. He comes in, he arrests me. I'm sitting in there surrounded by machines, plugged into IVs and everything. He goes in the monitor room. He finds out I have his son. He wants to come back in. This is Donnie. He said, I'd tear your fucking eyes out. He wanted to come in high, up here. The producers and the directors said, no, no, no. You have to build to that. We want you to come back in from the monitor room and you start to talk to him. And then you get increasingly more angry until the end when he takes the table and he throws the fucking table over and he beats the crap out of me. And Donnie said, if somebody had my kid, I'd want to fucking kill him. I'd kill him right then and there. With my bare hands, I'd kill him. That's how I'm going to fight. And I said, makes sense to me, man. You know, I've been in the same situation. I mean, I remember Juliette Lewis saying the same thing one time. They wanted to go logical. Well, there's logic, there's illogic, there's logic in illogic sometimes. So Donnie came, they shot the scene twice, low. And then Donnie came in, and it's in the film. He came in, and the SWAT guys have to hold him back because he wants to tear my fucking throat off. You know, it's just like, and they have to hold him away from me. And which, you know, Jigsaw is like, oh yes, this is the violent motherfucker that I know. This is the guy. Now I'm gonna play with him. So so it's the stakes, it's the tension, it's the level. So there was no problem. Then he goes back in the monitor room and he figures out, okay, I gotta calm down. I gotta beat this guy. And so when he comes back in, I say, sit down. You know, if you sit down, just sit down. All you gotta do is sit here and talk to me. And you'll get your son back. And I know he can't do that because he's a violent, dirty cop who is corrupt and won't be able to deal with what I'm going to do. So I'm playing a game with him. So it's all in how it's done. It's not just the words or the information. It's the rhythm. It's the pacing. And Donnie and I were in a situation where we could help the writer and the writers as actors to help the film, help the drama. And so you asked me if my opportunities are greater. That's most of the time I would go in. Every other job I do, not every other job, but you go in, you learn your lines, you show up, you do them like it's happening for the first time, the best you can. They don't want to hear from you, and you go out. And hopefully it's good, and they can use it, and you've done your job. But to be able to have greater opportunities to participate in helping to make the film better is a blessing.
So what happens for you if the series that you're working on goes and suddenly you're a producer and an actor and there goes 5 years of your life? Are you willing to walk away from the film world a little while to go on that ride?
Sure. It depends on the material. You know, if the material's good and you're able to do something rich and make a living, and maybe you do a film in a little window in Pittsburgh or something, you know.
So inside the Screen Actors Guild studio here in Los Angeles, we always like to ask our visiting artists, because all of us are thespians, and what would you like to say to people starting out or perhaps further on? What experience, strength, and hope would you like to, I know you've already given us a lot, but this is your chance to add some final words, final thoughts.
Consider those, in quotes, menial jobs, whatever they might be, your friends, because they keep you in the game. If they keep you in the game, there's hope. So if you're still got a night job or a day job or whatever it is, it's your friend. It's not anything to be feel like you're just doing this and you're not, No, it's like gold, whatever that job is. If it's driving a truck or whatever it is, it's like gold, because if you're not in the game, nobody can discover you. Nobody can be your Alan Parker.
Well, then along that line, because there's, very few of us that have the careers of you know, a Julia Roberts or somebody who just goes like that.
Yeah.
What coping skills have you developed to deal with disappointments?
I don't take it, I don't take them very seriously. They're part of the territory. I blow them off. They're just not relevant to me.
There's nothing that eats at you?
No,
No?
no, it's destructive. It would be too destructive. As soon as you start counting on something, like then it's not. It often doesn't happen in this business. And as soon as you, and if you don't expect anything, whatever you get's gravy. So I have very low expectations. And
Are you able to walk out of an audition room and you really just leave it there? You're done? You don't call your agents to see?
no, I don't, no, absolutely not. I'm not. Once you walk out of that room, it's up to the gods. Uh, I read for something about 3 weeks ago, and I read very well. And I was in this room because my attorney knew this guy, and I thought the role was interesting, and Holly Hunter was in it, and I respect her a lot as an actress, and so I went, and I read very well for this part, and I knew. I just can tell when I'm able to bring something to the material, and I got a call 2-3 days later, and they said it's not going to go any further, which is the terms that they use. It's not going to go any further is what they say. I said, all right, and I had done everything I could do, and but there was a part of me that went, God damn it, I shouldn't have gone in and read that for those fucking people. There was a part of me that was like, should I be going in and reading for this thing? So I shouldn't have gone in and read for these. But, so it was like about 5 minutes of like, not disappointment, more, damn, I didn't follow if they wanted me to, sometimes coming in later is better, like say, no, I'm not coming in. No, I'm not coming. And then they don't find anybody. They don't find the right guy. Then they're really serious about seeing you, or you're not just one of 25, you're one of 2, or so I try not to dwell on. It's too much that you can't control in this business, and how do I know what's in their mind? Who they're, like I said, they often hire somebody who's like, 26 or something. They say, well, why did you see me for? And so who knows?
Do you find though now, because you said you had 15 years where you weren't able to make a living, and you kind of have for the last 15, 20, do you get thrown at all if like you're working consistently for 3 or 4 years in a row and then suddenly it just seems like nothing is happening, or are you okay with that? Or do you even go through that anymore?
Yeah, I've gone through it. Even I don't let 3 or 4 years go by until, I
mean, you're working a lot for 3 or 4 years, and
right,
then you have a slump.
Right. Well, yeah, that can happen. I'm always running with, particularly feeling right now that I need to not wait for other people to casting people or wait for things to come my way. I'm trying to use momentum. If you do a play or you do anything, use the momentum to keep some momentum going. So I mean, I will go, if I haven't worked for a little bit, I I'll do almost anything to get back in front of the camera, to keep honing my skills.
And what do you mean by, you mean you'll take almost any role?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, why not? I mean, it's the process that I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of crummy stuff. I mean, I'm censoring myself because I don't want to follow crummy stuff with naming some names of things. But it doesn't matter. You do your absolute best to make this the most important thing you've ever done, but then you get the blessing of the technical workout. It's like working out. You stick yourself in front of it. There's still going to be, whether it's crap or it's not crap, there's going to be 90 people, 60 people, whatever. All of them are there because of what you're doing at that moment. And they're all gainfully employed. So I feel that it's important to keep putting yourself in that position, whether it's good material or not good material. And you'll learn something. And then you will get paid to learn, because the next thing might be really good. And you might feel more confident because of, that you've developed more technical skill, more ability to deal with the pressures, more ability to deal with timing issues, makeup issues. Everything has different issues. Hair, it just is all changing. It's a changing thing. It constantly, you learn something new every single thing you do. And so why not get paid to learn?
Well, and if it takes a village, who is your village these days? Do you have a team of people you work with? Like managers, agents, publicists? I mean, do you sort of have a whole...
Yeah, I actually, I don't have an agent at the moment. I haven't, I've been through, like most of us probably, my attitude about agents is not terribly good right now. It hasn't been for a while in terms of...
In what way?
Well...
Not respecting him or not liking...
Detail. Attention to detail. I just... So I work with a manager, an attorney, and a publicist. And I like the team that I have right now. It's enough for me. And the issue of agents, I mean, how can we talk about it anymore? How, we talk about agents and how agents are, and I've had so many meetings with agents. I've been at small agencies and big agencies, and it's a numbers game. There's a lot of actors. I haven't had terribly good experiences, there have been agencies there was one agency I really wanted to be with when I came to Los Angeles. It took me a couple of years, but I eventually ended up with them. It was horrible. And it was like, so there's a perfect example of watch out what you wish for, because you might get it, And I'm looking, I'm always looking for the right person, because it's really about people. And if I can find the right person, then, I look forward to having another agent someday. But I've been without an agent now for 2 or 3 years. And
I don't think it's gotten in the way of your career. I'm just taking a guess now.
Yeah, well, who's to know, I mean, I feel satisfied and content the way things are at the moment, and we'll see what happens. Saw 3 opens in a week, and I look forward to seeing how it's received as a film. I had a sandwich with the director the other day, and And he told me it's a very emotional film. I was like, what? He said it's a very emotional film. It's a surprisingly emotional film. Bahar Zumek is in it, who was in Crash. Angus McFadden, who was in Braveheart. Shawnee Smith, who played Amanda in 1 and 2, is in it, and I have a lot more with her in this than I had in either of the other two. So, you know, there are a lot of factors to a Saw film. The horror and the violence and all of that stuff is one of them, but the other track has to do with the relationships and with what's going on. So I haven't seen the film. I've seen clips of it because I've done ADR on it, but I haven't seen it. And but the producers, who are usually, if they're worried about something, they will, you know, and they say it's the best of the three, and it's very powerful. And so I'm optimistic about the way it's going to be received.
And on that note, let's give him a big hand. Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.